Good morning,
Good morning.
gentlemen and ladies. Lady, okay, I'm calling, or this is a special called workshop meeting of the Commission Court of Hood County, Texas. Today is Thursday, May 6, 2021. It's 9 a.m. We're in the Emergency Operations Center at 401 Deputy Larry Miller Drive, Granbury, Texas. And we're here today to discuss the current status of the 9 Hood County fire departments. No action will be taken at this workshop as it is an informational workshop only. Okay. Who's gonna kick this thing off?
Mike's our president.
Is he here?
I'm Mike Bell, Chief of North Hood County. I'm also the president of the Firefighter Association.
I know this gentleman well. He's also one of the best cooks here in Hood County, too.
All right, Judge Cotton brought it up. Yeah, our fish fry is the second weekend of June. Everyone's welcome. So I'm gonna hand it all off to Ron. Ron has prepared all the numbers for us.
Unfortunately, they picked me to talk to y'all, so y'all know I'm gifted with never use one word when two will do. So you better hope. You say that's enough, Ron, you know you won't hurt my feelings, just pop up and say shut up. Gentlemen, the fire chiefs, the association really thanks you for your time to listen to us today. I know I've had an opportunity to visit with several of you all over the past few months, and the objective today is just exactly what you said, kind of tell you where we are, what we see, and kind of explain why and how. And I promise you, we're not in here to be trying to say, oh my goodness, the sky's falling and everything's burning up. And we're not in here to try to say, oh my goodness, there's so many more people calling us and all like that, and we can't keep up. What we're basically trying to do is, all 9 departments have been represented in a couple of meetings where we pieced together what we think we want y'all to at least consider and look at, and they picked me to try to explain it. And most of the departments have somebody here. There's folks here that took day off work to try to be here to be able to answer your questions. And with that, the little handout that I gave you, the first page is an attempt to kind of frame for you sort of what's involved from a dollar standpoint for running a fire department, like what we're trying to do. And understand that all the numbers I got, they wouldn't pass an audit. I pulled numbers from the internet and all. I'm gonna tell you, I think what I'm telling you is reasonably accurate, plus or minus 10% on numbers and all, but it gives you directionally a concept of kind of where we are. Listed on this first page, you can see a list of 10's fire departments kind of in roughly the Hood County area, the surrounding Hood County area. And the reason these are there is they're the ones that I could get information pretty easy online, and they are also ones that have a paid component so that you could compare up the cost of the paid component. And what you can see there is I've taken each of those fire departments' budget as it's presented on their website, and they kind of break into 2 big categories: what the personnel costs are for these departments, where they have where they're paying some people to do the fire department work, and then just the operations part, the part of trying to turn the crank and keep things going. These budgets for them generally do not include any kind of major capital thing, like a big truck purchase or something, so, and they all do them a little differently, so that's why you gotta take it with a little grain of salt, because some of them put the electric bill with the fire department, the other one's got a big line, so they're not totally apples and apples, but I think they're good enough to consider. And what you can see on average, these departments, just excluding their major capital stuff, spends a little over $700,000 a year to operate before they start paying anybody anything. And that's only 13% of the total cost of running these. And you can see that the personnel costs run 87%. And a big takeaway that I hope you'll get from this is, so far in Hood County, we've been able to pretty well keep that 87% off of taxpayers' backs. And you can see how much of a big percentage it is, because if you say, well, we want to run a totally paid fire department, which is fine, I guess, but you can see you might as well better get ready to spend about 4 to 5 times on fire services as to what you currently are. And as population goes up, this only gets bigger. You know, the bigger departments over the Metroplex will be over 90% into the personnel side. Then what I've done is I have taken these dollar numbers and related them to the ad valorem taxable value in those jurisdictions. So like if you take Cleburne up there, if you chose to say we're gonna totally run Cleburne's fire department totally off ad valorem taxes, Cleburne would be needing a 5.5 cent ad valorem tax rate on their taxable property to operate, and they'd be needing 46 cents to handle the personnel part of what they're doing. When you add all that up, it comes out relatively okay. You can see something in the range of 6 cents when you express it in terms of an ad valorem tax rate is kind of what comes out saying it takes to operate a fire department, and 30 some odd cents on a tax rate if you choose to add in a paid component. And of course what that tells you is that if you take like a county with Hood, when you back out your debt service rate, if you go to a paid department and you assume these departments are properly staffed and all, you can be looking at almost a doubling of a tax rate to try to do it, is what comes out of that. The next line down there shows you where we are in Hood County for this year roughly, and you can see that we do a lot better job from a dollar standpoint for the 60 some odd thousand people that are protected. We basically are doing that on an operations budget in the range of 2 cents, and that includes the $600,000 pumper tanker refurbs, you know, 2 of those at $300,000. So if you back that out to try to be a little more apples and apples to major capital, somewhere in the 1 cent. So what we're doing today is the service we're delivering is basically costing the Hood County taxpayer something in the range of 1 to 2 cents. I hope that what you'll take away from that is you get a rough idea of what the contribution is financially from the volunteer force, and you get a rough idea also as to what it kind of takes when you strip out the personnel part for a lot of the comparable departments to kind of be operating. Then what we did as over the last month as a group of fire departments and fire chiefs through our association is we attempted to piece together what all of us would agree on was something to be able to present to you that kind of gave you a feel as to where we think we are and what we're seeing. And I'm gonna tell you, the calculations that I got in here where I used property tax, I reference everything to property tax because we're kind of used to talking that way. I know there's sales tax and other monies, but referencing it to that. And for next year, up on the operations side, we would suggest that we have a need to move this thing up a little bit to just over 2 cents on a property tax rate. And that would compare up against the 6 cents average that you're seeing from everyone else. And outside of a change in contract services that relates to a software, the big thing that is the difference there is currently you're paying each fire department $30,000 a year. And what the consensus is from our fire departments is that needs to be considered to be in the range of $100,000 a year. And to support that, and we'll come back and where you can really ask any questions that you want. To support that, the third page that's here is a spreadsheet. Each department was asked to provide on a common framework what they thought they needed, what their annual expenses were going to be to maintain the current level of service in the next fiscal year. And one outlier in this is Station 80 Pecan Plantation. Their numbers include their ambulance service, and they really don't have a way to break that out. I showed you what they put there, but they really are not just fire department numbers, and couldn't really break that out for us. And then over on the far right column, you will see what the average is of each of these departments by these different categories as they have turned them in. And you see when you get down to the bottom lower right-hand corner, it comes out at $99,000 on average. And each one of them's there by categories, and most departments have somebody here, so I wanted you to be able to see the raw meat there, and we'll come back and certainly would, if you want to come and say, well, Crescent, why are you spending this on testing equipment and all, I should be able to kind of give you some sort of answer for that. But here's your raw numbers to try to address the operations. One thing that you will see there is the question is obvious. Well, how are you guys closing that gap today? And each one of us is doing it a different way. You can see some departments are not getting the gap closed. You can see a fairly wide disparity in different departments, what they're coming up with to operate with. I'll know more about Crescent than anything else. This past 12 months, our donations are just right at $40,300. Well, that goes a long way to closing that type of gap. And then, of course, Crescent is unique in that we get funding from, we service different areas, and some areas, in contrast to Hood County, where like Hood County provides us a couple of trucks and all, they just, some of the other places is just flat cash, and so there's little movement of cash over here to compensate and offset that. But what you can see is you do have some departments that are just flat not able to close the gap, if you will, and they run the best they can, and some of them are here and able to talk to you about kind of their operations. But numerically, that's what's being asked of you to consider when we get into next year, is this $100,000 subsidy, and there's the justification or attempt to justify it for you, subject to any questions that you have. And again, that would shake out to be 2.3 cents on today's tax base, not trying to build in any escalation for next year or something, just on today's versus 6 cents that you saw on that average table on the front. The second thing, and here's the kind of the big pill, is, all the departments wrote down what they saw as major capital needs for the foreseeable future. And you got a table there that addresses several of those various needs. I'll speak to a couple of them, and some of the other chiefs here will speak to some of these others. And first of all, I think all of us, frankly, we kind of fell out of our chairs the last time we had one of these meetings, and we told you guys, hey, our air packs on the pumper tankers because it's being delayed, and all of a sudden, you know, you guys said, well, here's air packs, and we were numb. You got to understand, you know, we's coming out of a time where we've had some changes in fire marshal and things like that, and we just kind of all staggered out of here and said, wow. And what we didn't tell you is that, you know, the 5 air packs that y'all did that's on the trucks that the county provided for each of us, all of us operate, and to get the job done, we all operate a lot more trucks than that. And we've got all these other air packs that are in, to a large extent, in similar shape. And so each department inventory where they kind of were air pack wise. Some of us have trucks we put in service that we don't have air packs for yet because they're kind of on the pricey side. And when all that was totaled up with a pretty reasonable number, you'd see there's a little over $500,000 of additional air pack work that everybody, all the departments came up and said, yeah, we've kind of got a hole here. Of course, the pumper tanker refurbs continue at the after you get through what's scheduled to be done yet this year is North Hood counties and Cressons, and then there would be 4 left, and I just wrote those down at the 300,000 rough number there. The next big item, and which is a big one, has to do with our ability to haul water, bring water to a fire. And the number that you see there is the cost equipped roughly of the most recent tanker purchase that was done for Parker County ESD 1, to kind of give a number there. And I'll turn the floor over to Matt Hohan, Granbury's chief. He and Mike in the last week went and looked at some of these trucks and all. We're not in a position to really write out specs and everything, but these guys are going to speak to the fact of our 9 departments. Every department said either now or in the next few years, we're in a bind for this type of truck. And so, Matt, it's yours.
Okay. So myself, Chief Bell, Chief Tilson, and Assistant Chief Jackson, we were formed as a committee to just address the common need across all the departments in the tankers. And the tankers here in Hood County are something that we use continuously and regularly, not only for structure fires, but we also use them a lot for wildland. And just due to the general nature of Hood County, the cities are going to have the hydrants, and your rural areas are not going to have hydrants. And most of your hydrants in Hood County are going to be located in Granbury, Cordova, a little bit down into Indian Harbors area in a few spots, Con, and Lycan, and Crescent. Well, there's a lot more to Hood County than just those incorporated areas and the area around Bay Mud. And the tankers play a vital role in how we all mutual aid to each other, but also respond in our own districts. Certain areas have much more of a calling for water than others. I'll just use two extreme examples. Granbury's covered with hydrants, and Station 70's area, Oak Trail Shore, there's no hydrants out there. So in the event when we have a call out there and the water starts getting used on scene, they have to drive back into town to grab water to then take it back on scene. It's been common, we make it work, and this is the way the mutual aid works for us. And that's why we have so many departments towing when we have a structure fire or wildland. So in this example, Station 70 has a structure fire. Their engine shows up first, 2,000 gallons of water, that's the tanker pumper, and it goes to work. And then the neighboring departments that were called for mutual aid, they come in with their tankers, and assuming that the 2,000 gallons of water and then the water that arrives on scene from there is not enough, then you start a water shuttle. And the trucks start driving into town or wherever the nearest static water source for drafting's at. And this is where the universal need for all the departments for tankers. And we've highlighted, in this little brief I gave you guys, there's two particular calls that I highlighted. The Meander Ranch fire, which happened last year, it's actually pretty impressive feat. Station 70 set up their aerial truck in a rural setting, which is exceedingly uncommon. Usually you're not going to ever see a ladder truck set up not being connected to a hydrant. We set up an aerial. Station 20's pumper tanker was the primary feed truck, and then from there we had more trucks set up on the road to operate as, think of them as just tanks of water that's going to be shuttled to the aerial in engine 20, and then 4 other apparatus were set up a water rotation shuttle into the city of Granbury for a round trip of, was it 8 miles or 4?
4 miles, 8 miles round trip.
8 miles round trip. And because everyone had everything lined up and everyone was on the same page, and primarily because we had the tankers, large tankers particularly on this one, 3,000 gallon tankers, we were able to supply a massive amount of water continuously in a rural setting. The other fire I like to highlight is a call here in town. Several years ago we had the Equibrand fire, and the fire was so large that even the hydrants for the city of Granbury couldn't keep up with the water flow that was demanded for that call, and we established a water shuttle on that call. And over a 10-hour period, it was approximately 300,000 gallons of water was moved by tankers alone, just on that call. And all of us have a specific area that either doesn't have hydrants or specific facilities and structures that are large enough that would determine a need and call for the extra tankers to come in to establish a water shuttle. And in our committee, we, when we sat down and met, we didn't start by looking at trucks first. The first thing we sat down and did is just said, okay, what do we want in a criteria? What do we need this truck to fit? What's going to be our general need? And the first thing we looked at was, do we want it to carry more people or truly be dedicated more towards tanker operations? And this is also a cost factor. If you start making it into a 6-person cabin engine, cost goes way up. If you keep it more towards a dedicated tanker, a 2 or 3 person truck, 2-door truck, that's going to help bring the cost down substantially. So we agreed upon just a 2-door cabin chassis. A large tanker, 3,000 gallons or more. And in Hood County, there's 4 departments, well, Pecan also, 5 departments that have trucks at 3,000 gallons or more water, but Pecan's engine tanker is an engine, so there's a good chance it would be locked down on scene. So that leaves 4 available trucks for a water shuttle, and of the 4, 3 are in service, 1's down for repairs right now. So we wanted a larger tank, and again, this is to really address those rural areas, and you don't think that the extra 1,000 gallons makes that big of a difference, It does on scene, and it really does when those trucks are the ones rolling in and out for a water shuttle. A larger pump, a 1250 GPM pump, and that's just to ensure that when you're on scene with this apparatus, because again, not only do we go to structure fires and supply water for primary attacks, that truck on the same scene can be used on the side to defend another structure, protect other buildings, whatever assets the owners have. And water flow is not only critical for being able to shuttle water, but also for the protection of other assets. So a larger pump's important. Also, you've got wildland, and the ability to just fill multiple trucks and set up multiple discharge lines so that you can start filling up 3 or 4 trucks at a time. We did decide to recommend a heavy-duty cab and chassis. This is more for just the longevity of the apparatus. As we go further down the rabbit hole on this and really start looking at specs, you can go really broad spectrum on this. You can go much lighter duty, you can go heavier duty. With us going and looking at a heavier duty cab and chassis, we're looking at more of longevity and reliability of the apparatus. Hood County and the departments in Hood County, we don't look at apparatus in the short term, that 5, 7, 10-year window. We look at trucks 15, 20 plus years. And if you're looking for a truck that's got the reliability 20 plus years, that's gonna be a heavy duty cab and chassis. And drop tank operations was something that was real important to us. I just highlighted the Meander Ranch fire and the Echo Brand fire. There is other places and times where we have used the drop tanks. And it is scenario specific when drop tank operations are gonna be used and considered. But the ability to take a portable tank off the truck, immediately drop all your water on that truck into this tank and drive off. And the water's not being used, but it's readily stored for the apparatus on scene is a significant advantage. Particularly when you start thinking about multiple drop tanks down, multiple trucks transferring in and out of town, or wherever the local hydrant's gonna be at. The drop tanks operations actually significantly enhance that rural setting. And it's something that we really did consider and look at in this truck. With the drop tanks, there's different types of ways to get the water off the truck, but at the end of the day, we're all agreed upon just the focus on the drop tank operations and their versatility and usability to all the departments. One thing that is a challenge to us currently with all of our trucks that we have, excluding, you have a rear suction on engine 20, I think. Our ability to use a static water source is challenged with most of our county tanker pumpers and tanker 1. And it's our ability to suction water from a static water source. So you've got a large structure fire, wildland fire, rural setting, but you have a swimming pool, okay? Homeowner's perfectly fine with you using the swimming pool water for that fire. Well, how do you get the water out of the swimming pool? In our case, we have to either connect a whole bunch of hard suction hoses and be able to reach the swimming pool to drop it into there and suck the water out of the pool and ultimately get it into the truck. But the kicker with that is that all of our suction is on the sides of the trucks. And if you take that same idea and you pull up to Lake Granbury on a narrow boat ramp, you still got to get close enough to the water to be able to get the side of the truck close enough to the lake to be able to draft out of the lake. So one of the things we really like to see on this truck is just a front or rear suction so we can pull up or back up to the water source. And those few extra feet really does make a big difference, particularly when you're in a narrow space. One of the more important things for our trucks we were looking at is just the ability to use a deck gun or a turret. The particular truck we looked at, they had their turret set up on the front bumper. It helps with their ability to just quickly set up and start spraying water on a scene. Again, the scenario is you show up, you have a structure fire, and you need to immediately protect this area off to the left. You just take this turret, deploy it, turn it on, no manpower, no physical powers lost on scene to manning that particular piece of equipment, because the truck's just set up and flowing water. And the last thing that we looked at and considered was just a fully equipped truck. And a fully equipped tanker truck's not like fully equipping an engine. The most expensive thing on there is gonna be the 2 additional air packs. And then it's got some basic hose lays and some basic equipment for making connections to the actual apparatus, to other apparatus in various hose sizes. So after coming together with this just basic list, we took a visit to Parker County. Parker County had just recently ordered 8 apparatus, 4 of which were tankers. And this particular truck filled all of our criteria for something that we would be interested in and were looking at. And again, this particular truck had the heavy-duty cabin chassis. And after spending almost an hour and a half up there going through the truck, talking to the local crews about the apparatus, we felt coming out of there that we were very comfortable with that truck and that recommendation of that apparatus. It's gonna fit all of Hood County's needs easily. The truck carries enough water, heavy-duty cabin chassis, for also handling some of the smaller areas and on the extreme backsides of hills and valleys that these apparatus do go into. They'd be able to handle a wildland scenarios. Don't think that they're brush trucks, because they're not that. They are exceedingly heavy trucks, particularly with 3,000 gallons of water. I can assure you they do like nice hard pavement and a good compact road. But they do handle various off-paved road scenes pretty well. And coming out of that, after looking at this truck and agreeing on our just general visit of this truck, we contacted 2 reps for Siddons Martin and Metro Fire. And the price for the Kenworth T880 3,000 gallon tanker, fully equipped, single apparatus, was $456,000. And if the Hood County chose to go in a bulk purchase, it'd be discounted down right now to $436,000. The last thing that I just wanted to put on here, and it's more for just your information, is some of the different purchasing options that are available to you. Obviously, the first one's just an outright purchase. Cash on hand, you make the purchase. Then you have your more typical yearly payments and set up. Usually payments are on a 10-year schedule, so $436,000 apparatus would be $43,600 per year for 10 years. And then the last one is lease to own. Now, lease to owns become very, very popular the last couple of years. And typically lease to own is primarily set up by departments and cities that are more interested in trying to have a fleet rotation set up, okay? One of the bigger advantages to smaller cities and smaller governments from looking at a purchase like this is that it gives you the flexibility of when you actually make the payment on the truck. If you signed a contract on a lease to own in October, and let's pretend that the truck was delivered in January, you would actually not make the first payment on that truck until the following year. So, I guess it's just an option, and I just think for us, it was important to give you guys just some different information on possible purchasing options out there. And the last thing that we looked at, and I'll turn it over to Mike on this, is after looking at the truck, getting price tag shot, The other thing that we looked at was, what is our options for possibly just looking at used or semi-used apparatus? And for that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
And most of you know, I try to make all our trucks last as long as I can. Right now, I've got a 1987 International 2,000-gallon tanker. I have just lost in the last year. Matter of fact, it was going to the Meander Fire. I lost the clutch on it. It's gonna cost me $7,600 to replace the clutch. Clutch, pressure plate, go out there. Do I wanna spend that kind of money on a truck that's that old and that wore out? This truck is also the same one that if any of you were on the board at the time, you may remember that Mr. Elmer Ryan drove over a Cadillac in Crescent with it. So that tells you how long ago that was, if anybody remembers.
We had Cadillacs.
It was a '72 Cadillac that got driven over because he run a red light. But anyway,
Not to mention that truck, there was very few people that could drive it because it's the old manual split differential transmission.
I really don't want to replace the clutch transmission. For me to change it to an automatic puts it up at an $11,000 range. I've been out looking for tankers to replace it. What Jeff just passed out is just one of them that I have looked at. It's 2001 Peterbilt, 2,500 gallons of water. It's close to what we were specking out. It didn't print out all the way, but if you look down there at the price, that's $206,000. That's for a 20-year-old truck. You know, this is kind of things that we're looking at. Yes, if I wanted to go for a lighter duty truck, another International, I could probably get that down $40,000. But that's also a smaller tank size. So, with limited budgets, it's hard for me to spend this kind of money without going in extreme debt. You know, North Hood County prides itself because we started in '91. Everything we have right now is paid off. So I can make purchases as long as I have the donations and everything coming in. As for replacing a tanker right now, there's no way the department can do it by itself without going in extreme debt. Without any guarantees of income coming in, because we can't rely on donations a whole lot right now. I just don't see us replacing a tanker unless we can get some help.
I know it's an obvious question to you to be sitting here and saying, okay, well, y'all talk about the fire on the end of the road and, hey, you guys moved the water. Why are you coming here and saying we need something when you did it? I was in charge on that fire of the water supply, of moving that water around to pump it down the driveway to Mike and them. I think you gotta understand that to make that work, pull that off, Crescent right now, we run 2 tankers. One of them is leased from Parker County ESD 6 and it's a 2003. And then the one that we own outright's a 2009. Fortunately that fire was kind of towards Crescent and we got both of those tankers over there. We also moved water with Toller's tanker, which is similar, they had theirs before we bought our 2009, so I guess it's a 07, 08, something in that range. And it came all the way from Toller. That's the one that's down now with the tank in trouble like that. And then we had Granbury, the county-owned tanker out of Granbury. This was fairly close to Granbury, and we were able to do that. Like I said to some of you, I'm not really arguing that today Crescent needs another tanker, but it is a decision point if you're gonna buy several copies of these things, are you gonna then say, okay, is a place like Crescent, which we've demonstrated is critical on the east side to be able to move this water, you know, I may be able to keep these things going another 10 or 15 years. I don't know. But, you know, there is a little decision point there, and as the chiefs talked, we kind of concluded, because you got, with Tollers tanker being down, your big water hauling capacity is mainly Crescent and the one in Granbury. Then you start to default to the 2,000 gallon pumper tankers, and you know, North Hood County, which was who the Meander Road fire, that was their fire. You know, they don't have the water hauling. They just flat don't have it. Oak Trail Shores just flat doesn't have it until some of us can get there. And you can see if Crescent has to get all the way to Oak Trail Shores, we're in a world of hurt. Lypan is in a similar situation to Crescent. They've got a tanker. It's a little on the older side. They kind of figure it's an 01. They kind of figure 3-5 years, you know, something on that. And that's the reason why, even though today we can move water reasonably okay, we've got some big holes out there, and that's the reason you see us as a group of fire chiefs in all the departments saying we think the wiser thing would be to make a bulk purchase and kind of do across the board. And as you know, one of the things that has made the Hood County Fire Service pretty strong over the years is for the county support. You guys have, and your predecessors have tried to kind of keep things pretty equal between the departments. And this is a glaring discrepancy between some of these departments that we kind of feel needs to be filled. The next thing that's down here is the departments that border onto the lake believe that they're in a bind with regards to when they have to conduct their water operations. And I don't have to tell you, Crescent, we don't have any water. We just have rock. So I'm not the one to talk about boats at all, but Bob from Indian Harbor, the chief here, he wants to talk to you a little bit about what we're being asked to do nowadays out on the lake.
Bob Dogger, Indian Harbor. Jeff can back me up some stuff. He's been there a lot of years longer than me. But in the past 5 years, we've made over 246 calls on the water, from fire structures to fire docks on fire, water rescue, assisting BRA and game ones and things of that nature. And we make 12 calls a year. As Matt alluded to, getting to some of these houses on ground is difficult. It's a lot more difficult with these new buildings going up and getting to some of these spots. But I can be on the water in 5 to 10 minutes to handle some of this stuff. But what we're using right now is a 10-year-old boat, flat boat with a center console. I'm putting out about 500 gallons a minute, but I can only do it with limitations on the gravity-fed brush pump. So I don't have the capabilities of not just working the fire, but sending unlimited amounts of water that I have at the lake to the engines and pump trucks that they need up there to fight the fires we're doing structure fire. We need something. Some of the other stations, I think Cape Cordova, you've got some other boats, but I think we're the only ones that actually have a pump working the lake for structure fire. And that lake is getting busier and busier, and more houses are being built. And they're being built in some areas that it'll take forever to get a hose down and fight those fires and fight those docks. For instance, I think we had that one over in Pecan recently, 5 times we've been there. In 3 days, we had to go fight a dock fire. You can't get to it with some of the hoses. You had to do it from the lake. We don't have the capabilities. We have a 10-year-old boat, the only boat out there that's fighting fires with a deck lamp. We need something, I need something that I don't have to drop a hose in the water and count on that hose sucking it up. I need to pull in to be able to fight that fire immediately and not go through 10 minutes to get the fire and 10 minutes to get set to fight the fire. I'll lose the building, I'll lose the dock, I'll lose whatever's there. But again, I've been on 246 calls in the last 5 years of 15 drownings, call-outs, water rescues, fireboat dock, drownings, joint operations, structure fires, boats blowing up. We have the only boat, and it's not capable of doing that. It isn't. So we got a request in for our boat, about $230,000 to $260,000 that will handle all that. The boat we're requesting could put out 500 gallons a minute plus do a 5-inch run it from the boat to the tankers, to the pumpers to be able to assist in structure fires. We don't have that capability right now. So, we need a boat. This is a resort area, it's a lake, people are coming, we get more and more people, we're having all kinds of problems on that lake. We need a boat, if not us, one of these stations needs a really good boat.
The thinking from the departments that are on the lake, is that we, as long as the lake is, we kinda need one towards the south in an Indian Harbor area, and then Mike and them kind of up on the north side think they need one up there, and that's why you see 2 of these things put in. And I'll say this, you know, when we have to dive the lake, Dave Cordova coordinates our dive team from the fire department side and the sheriff's office. That's your divers that's going down in there. Now, when we lose someone in the lake, we have to wait till we find something to sort of dive on. But I'm a diver, although for this I do shore support. I like diving in Fiji as opposed to over here like Granbury. But anyhow, one of the big things to me is that these are bigger boats to where the divers can have their equipment and be out there and can get in it. All you needed to do was be doing the shore work when we had the young lady that on the south end of Cordova, you know, got hit by the propeller, and it took us a while to locate her. And when you got to work those divers through with her mom and dad standing there with you and watching all, you know, they were right there, and I'm talking to them at the same time I'm trying to get these divers out on the water and make sure their equipment is good and everything. I know there's no way to put a price tag on that, but you know, that's part of what we do, and you're having to sit there with that young lady's parents, and I'm trying to explain to her what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do. At the same time, we're trying to make sure these divers are safe when they get out there in the water. It sure would have been nice on that thing to have had those divers out kind of away from this, you know. You think about fixing to jump in that murky water, you can't see anything, and in the back of your mind is mom and dad right up here on the shore. But it got done. It worked. But I'm not going in the water unless we are in real dire straits. I'll go in the water because I can do it. But I can really see with dive teams that we've got, you know, the ability of these things to help support the sheriff's dive team too. And we do interact and work together, use the same training guy for the 2 dive teams and that sort of thing. So that's why you see this line in here talking about a couple of properly equipped platform boats that could be used out on the lake. The last item that you see there is station construction remodels. Every department, let me say every department, Pecan wasn't able to be at our meeting last night, but all other 8 departments, our stations are jam-packed full. I use Crescent as an example. We got a Forest Service grant for a military truck. It's sitting out in back under a cover, which is, you know, you'd like to we wanna get as much life out of these trucks as we can. And, of course, comes the cold weather, we're out there draining all the water out. It's not the end of the world, but when we got it empty with water, we effectively don't have a truck to go use. And every department many of us, we hope we've kind of done a halfway decent job of like justifying these tankers. I will tell you, if tomorrow you drive a tanker like this up to Crescent, I don't know where to put it to get it in out of the weather. I'll find a place. I'll guarantee you bring it, I'll rent somebody's, building or something, because we sure don't want these trucks sitting out. This equipment can't sit outside, and it's just the wrong thing to be doing. So you say, well, why do you need all these trucks? When I started here in Hood, it started on this 15 years ago, okay, great, we'd have a call this day, we'd have one this day. Sometimes now Crescent is running 3 calls at the same time. Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but it does, and these other departments are too. So it requires us to have the additional apparatus to be able to, you know, go multiple times. It doesn't help when the judge calls up and says, my house is on fire, and we say, well, I'm sorry, Judge, we've only got one truck, and he's over here on Jack Wilson's house that's burning up, you know. And the judge says, well, that Jack's burned up, bring it. But what goes on with us is that's forcing us to have to operate and maintain more apparatus, and all of our departments are in that shape. And our physical facilities to be able to properly make sure we get the maximum life out of these things, all of us are taxed on that. We don't know exactly how much we need. You know, construction costs now are just awful. So I'm gonna tell you what we did. Do what?
No,
We have a couple of departments, well, 3 departments that believe to take care of their area, they really need another satellite station. You know, one kind of built in another location, and that's Toller, and that's Indian Harbor, and that's Dakerdola. Some of us need to add on or remodel our existing things, and at Crescent, I was able to get a fellow who had just built some airplane hangars, which is similar to our type of metal building and everything, to try to figure out, and holy cow, it came out for us to, we own our land and everything, but just build this thing on there with the thick concrete you need for the trucks and all. When we got to figuring on it, if we connected up to our existing building, it came out at $1 million. And it would have been $300,000, you know, 4 years ago. And all of us, you know, these sort of numbers are they're just out of our realm of comprehension. But what we did was the departments that believed they needed a new satellite station or new station, we just swagged in $1.2 million for what you're looking at here. For those that just believe they need a remodel or add-on, we swagged in $800,000. But Crescent's in at $1 million, and that totaled out to $8.6 million. What we kind of kicked around last night, and I don't know whether it would be something that you guys would feel good about, we kind of thought that maybe a way to look at this might be for each of you guys maybe to come for in your precinct, the stations that are in your precinct, let us show you on the ground what we're kind of up against and what we think would be the best solution. And then you all could come back together as a group and, Dave could say, oh, what Beck Crescent wants to do, dumbest thing I ever heard of. Well, he usually tells me what I'm doing kind of dumb, but, you know, I'd accept that and then get a little better handle where you guys at least had a representative that kind of looked at what we had, or maybe the judge comes along, and then maybe what we could do is get somebody based on us all kind of agreeing on what we might need to do, go around and get a reasonable price on this thing. If we did this type of a project, we sure don't, we want to do this as a kind of total project for all of us. We don't want each of us trying to go find someone to do this. I don't think. I think there would be some benefit in that. So that's how we came up with the $8.6 million that you see there. It's not the most accurate number. Yes, sir, Jack?
Quick question. Do the other facilities have enough property to even build additional?
Some do, and some don't.
Because that means you're gonna have to acquire some land also in
Yes.
some cases.
Yes. That's why you see some of them talking a little bit more about a separate station in a different area. Crescent, we got it, we own the land, but, it's gonna be, each one of these facilities is so unique. That's why something, whether you guys picked you somebody, be it Jeff to go around and look at each one, or each of you commissioners or whatever, but we kind of, I guess what I'm trying to communicate is, we're not trying to sit here and say, oh my goodness, we're the fire chiefs, just listen to us, we know what we need. We're trying to say, it's an open book to you. We think we know what we need. All of us kind of understand buildings and stuff like that. And if it was a thing that the county was able to help fund doing some of this, we want you guys to feel good about what we're doing. So that's just one trial balloon idea. When you total up all of these major capital things that I just talked about, as you can see, it gets a big number, $15 million. I did a little math down below, and this is another, you can't go totally to the bank with it, but what I did look at was, if you take the county's current debt service on the current outstanding debt, and look what you're spending per $1 million to service the current debt. And of course, some of that is at different maturities, so it's not all new debt. It's some you're paying more on principal and interest depending on the term of it and all like that. You know, you can come out and you can do a back of the envelope calculation like what, how much per outstanding indebtedness today the county is paying in debt service per $1 million, and I just took what you've got this year, multiplied it by that $15 million, and then applied it to your current tax rate, and it's a little over 4 cents. I'm not going to tell you that that's the best financial engineering, but it kind of gives a little bit of a framework or a little bit of perspective. I know we've kind of kicked with some of you the concept around a little bit that maybe this is something that you as a court might consider to be something that would be approachable for a bond election or something like that. I will tell you this, everyone that was in our room last night, if you concluded that these were reasonable things that needed to get done and you chose to go that route, you're not going to be out there on a limb saying, voters, consider if you want to authorize this amount of borrowing for it. We'll be right there with you, and I know there's limitations once you call an election on what we can do with taxpayer-funded stuff, you know. I gotta change my shirt if I go try to, and don't say fire department on it if I go try to do this, but as long as Matt tells us kind of what our rules are and everything, this, we're not gonna, if you choose to go that route, we're gonna be there and do everything that we can to try to make sure we can explain to people why this is a need that we feel like needs to be met. The last item that I wanna talk about, and then I'll try to shut up because we probably really stepped on some toes and things like that here, is the personnel side. I'm gonna be frank with you. If we don't have our personnel, forget all the rest of this stuff. And Hood County, Hood County has a tradition of doing a lot of good work, not just fire department wise, with volunteers. And the front page over there shows you just how much benefit is, or how much avoiding costs there are so far with our fire service doing stuff with volunteers. We all know that today we're gonna get there to where there's just too much work to be done volunteer-wise, you know. I guess we used to run sheriff's posses with one sheriff. Now he's got a whole department, you know, and fire departments will get there sometime too. You won't get all of us in the fire chiefs to agree how close we are, but we know something like that is there. We look at the huge, relatively speaking, huge cost of fire personnel. And I think we have been working as best we can to, whenever that day is when we gotta wade into that, try to push it out as far as we reasonably can. And what that, I'll give you the example for Crescent. I've been the chief at Crescent 5.5 years now. When I started, we had 26 members on our roster. And that included some of our older ones and all like that. Today, we've got 67, 69, something like that. Biggest thing I do is try to recruit volunteers. It's not running around putting out fires and stuff. It's trying to come up with the workforce. And of that 26 that we had when I became chief 5 or so years ago, right now we've still got 10 of them. There are studies out there, and I mean, FEMA did a big study a few years ago on volunteers and everything. It's 250 pages, you know. If you really want to go to sleep, you can read this thing. But we're way better off than a lot of other areas so far of being able to keep up a volunteer workforce. And we want to ride that horse as long as we think it's reasonable to be riding. But we know, you know, somewhere down there it's going to be different and all like that. What we would like to suggest you all consider is throwing a little bit of money toward this personnel thing. And we don't have this real well defined. If you were of a mind to help us a little in that area, what we would probably do is seriously consider a small firefighter pension. We think that might help retain people. But we got a number through talking to Melissa about kind of some rough beginning pension numbers, and it came out right now at like $140,000 a year. But there's a plug in there for a couple $100,000, and conceptually what we might do, if you all felt or kind of gave us a green light or felt like that we wouldn't be just spinning our wheels, wasting our time, we'd like to take from each of our departments one or two of our folks that are various age groups, some younger, some that are energetic, put them in a room and try to figure out what's the thing that's pushing your button to cause you to want to help us do that. And work with the county's HR, with her, and see if we might be able to come up with kind of a package program that we think would be of great benefit to us to help us try to build the volunteer force as best we can and do that. What exactly would it look like? I don't know. I'm gonna tell you that there is wreckage strewn throughout the state of Texas of different fire departments that have worked in this area. And some of what we would probably come up with may not work. When you're dealing with people, everybody is different. We all react to a different drummer. And I'll use an example that just took place in another of my counties over here in Johnson County. Johnson County has a countywide emergency service district, countywide ESD, and by the vote, when it was set up and then subsequently voted, its property tax rate caps at 10 cents. And they, similar to Hood County, northern Johnson County has all these people coming along and everything and getting a little push for money. And so this past May went for a sales tax election, decided to do that. And they surveyed the administratives, the chiefs, what do we need, if we're able to convince the voters to do a sales tax. And it came out as one of the top things was incentivizing the volunteers through some sort of mechanism. Then they took and did the survey for the volunteer force, for the people that's out there. And that was way, way down the list. So it shows you that those of us sitting here in this room as fire chiefs may not be the best ones to tell you what are the right buttons to push to provide you with the human resource that it takes to do this stuff. And that's why conceptually we kind of toss an idea similar to that out, but it's not going to do us any good to put a group together and try to build something unless we reasonably know that you guys are supportive at least of the concept of us trying to do something like that. You can see the number we threw down there, and of course, a 0.6 of a cent property tax rate compared up to 31 cents is, you're so far off that it seems like a little bit of money, given the huge cost if we don't do this well, might be some money that's well spent. And I realize that's pretty ill-defined, and you can understand why it's a little bit ill-defined, but we know we've got a issue there. Every volunteer firefighter does it for a different reason. You could go around the room in here and ask each one of us, why are you doing what you do, and you'll probably get as many answers as are in here.
Ron, the 280 volunteer, is that your status now, what you've got?
That's roughly what Jeff tells us we have across the board with our 9
For all of
departments.
Hood County?
Yes, sir.
That's an average. We average around 280
Oh,
volunteers.
yeah, it comes
It
and
goes
goes.
up, it goes down, it ebbs and flows, it just depends, there's a lot of factors that play into that, the economy, where the jobs are, where people are having to go to work, housing, there's a lot of factors that come into play, but we average about 280 with all 9 departments.
And I don't want to, I hope that you think what we've done today with y'all has been a little bit matter of fact. I'm not trying to sit here and jab or yank on heartstrings or stuff like that. But when you get to the people deal, I will a little bit. you got a lot of us out here that see things that people shouldn't be seeing. And, we do it because it needs to be done. And we've got a lot of folks that, you know, there's a lot of people come to us and wanna try to do this stuff, and they're really not cut out for it. Yeah, it's one thing to be spraying water over here on grass. It's a different thing when you go to a lake house on the side of the lake and 6 kids have, you gotta dig 6 kids out of it. Your volunteer staff is doing it. And we're doing our dead level best to answer it and give you guys the best service that you and your taxpayers deserve. But we know that we've got volunteers out here who are kind of, there's just so much of this stuff you can take. And, we've gotta bring new talent in, we've gotta support the ones that are there. And I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh boy, you know, look at us, we're all falling apart or stuff like that. But some of this stuff is real. This is, we talk about squirting water and spraying on fires and stuff like that. But there's another component of this with these people that, somehow we need to do a little better job of addressing. My department is blessed. Dr. Knox over at the Church of Christ is our chaplain, but I will tell you, 2/3, I don't know, because I obviously don't get into it, but I know half to 2/3 of our folks at times have called on him to talk through some of these things that are going on, and that's kind of part of this whole personnel package. We're doing it. You got the same thing, your career firefighters and all, and, but if you saw your way fit to kind of help us address our personnel side a little bit, I think all of us would be real appreciative of it with whatever comes out that needs to be the best way to do it. Y'all have given us an hour and 10 minutes just to sit here and ramble. I hope that what we did was kind of give you guys facts and figures and reasonable support. We know that some of this stuff needs some more meat on the bones, and that this was meant to be an informational meeting. We just really appreciate that you would take the time to come and listen to us. And with that, I think we're ready to respond to whatever comments or questions you might have for any of us, whether it be on our individual finances or where we are, and you kind of see our thought process that we're at right today.
Well, I think this has been very good. All of y'all, what y'all put together has been extremely helpful, at least for me, to understand it and to get a real feeling for it. And, you know, everybody talks about how great the volunteer fire department here is in Hood County. And y'all say that we all got those air packs. I mean, I think everybody on this court said when y'all need those air packs, you've got to have air to be able to run into a fire. I mean, to us, that wasn't much of a consideration at all, and we got the money to do that, and this is a well thought out plan. And I tell you, it kind of works hand in glove. You want people to come in and work, but you got to have the right equipment, and you got to have good buildings, and you got to have people. And I'm for one to really study this and see what we can come up with, and explore all the avenues. Does any commissioner have any questions they would like to ask?
Just a comment, I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but ESDs are talking about 10 cents. This looks like you could do it for the county for 7.1 cents. Are you getting the same thing with this that you would be with an ESD? Is there anybody want to speak on that?
I guess if you go around this room, you'll get a different answer from each one of us. Clearly with more more money with an ESD route, you're gonna do more things. I'll tell you what usually happens with the ESD route up against this thing, and of course, y'all know I've spoken to the ESD concept, trying to answer your questions. What generally starts to develop is, and you can see the numbers here, the ESD taxi mechanism generally brings in a little more money than just the basic operations, which we highlight sort of here and otherwise. And so what eventually happens is the ESD says, well, let us start to supplement more our personnel side of it. And there are some ESD and combination departments that have meshed the volunteer and the paid side fairly well. And then there are others where it hasn't worked very good. And the challenge that ends up coming when the ESD starts down that road is, you just saw here where kind of, if you get to the full paid deal, you're talking 30-cent tax rate for that, and obviously you got an ESD capped at 10 cents. So the ESD can start down that road, but some of them are wealthy and can get pretty far down that road, others not so much. And there are a good number of places where it shows out that you ended up with less performance because the meshing of the paid and the volunteer didn't go so well, and there wasn't the money to do the whole paid thing versus the other. That's where most of them end up drifting to. Doesn't mean it has to be that way, but there's a lot that do. Undoubtedly, every one of us today, rather than this right here, there was more money coming in, we come up with things to do with it. I really didn't, this wasn't put together trying to say, can we come in under the 10 cents or something like that. This was a ground built up thing. Some departments probably have some other things that they think they needed. This is kind of a consensus deal here that's at most of them. I told y'all, there's a lot of ESDs that work really, really good. And usually they tend to be in the more populated, higher call volume area, and you're at the point where the volunteer part kind of falls off. You've got the administrative costs of the ESD that sort of what we're tossing out here is somewhat avoided by what if you kind of go down the route here, and I think you know that at least right now, the majority of departments have not approached you guys with a ESD petition. That doesn't mean that each of us might find that that's something that we might have to do. I think, Commissioner Cotton, one of the things and I don't want this to sound like it's a gun to the head. Obviously, we think that these are kind of important things that need to be addressed. We wouldn't be spending our time here talking to you about them. We're not trying to buy a tanker just to sit there and be able to ride it around in a parade or something. And we know that it's y'all's decision whether you say what we want to do with our fire services, continue for the county to be underwriting it, or say, hey, you guys go get you an ESD. And that's not trying to be saying, hey, do this or we head down the ESD route. That is not what I'm trying to say at all. But I think to a large extent, and every department's different, and everyone has different opinions, but to a large extent, where the majority of the departments are right now is to say, county commissioners, we think that if you go this route, this will work for us for the foreseeable future. And I guess that's a question that if you wanna go around the room, you can ask every one of us, and you'll probably get a different answer. But I hope I'm a little responsive to what you were asking.
Oh, you answered my question.
So I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
When you talk about, Chief Hohan, a bulk purchase, what does that mean?
That's just assuming that if you buy more than one truck at a time, so each year you go out and you buy one truck, that price of the tankers was $356. So if you bought one, of course, inflation. But if you bought 9 at one time, that bulk purchase, that's where the discount would step in.
So my question is, if you bought 3, would that be the bulk purchase, is my question?
It would be entirely dependent upon, you know, the rep and the sales company, but yes, even buying two, you would get a discount. The more you buy, the cheaper it's gonna get. That's, on the Parker County trucks, they bought 8 total. 4 were tankers, and I think 4 were brush trucks. And that is how their price, because the truck that they specifically spec'd out was around 580,000, and there was a lot of stuff on there. But after their bulk purchase, don't quote me on the price, but I think they paid around $515, $520 per tanker truck. So that's how they got their prices down.
And I certainly appreciate all the work you guys have done. You know, we had a long discussion the other day. I feel like this is very detailed, and this is the kind of information that I need myself. I don't know, but I won't speak for everybody up here, but I'll speak for myself. I really appreciate y'all doing this and getting something distilled where we can look at the numbers and apply it to what y'all need. Because I've got a lot of ideas going on in my head right now that I couldn't get my hands around before. And you know, when I was in San Antonio practicing law on the defense side, I did a lot of fire work as a lawyer, defending outfits that manufactured products that got blamed on fires. So I'm not totally, this is not totally new information as far as what you guys have to go through. I've been to scenes and understand the great job you guys do. And like I say, I really appreciate, this really is helpful to me.
Commissioner Cotton, in my response to your question, and obviously there's more here, one thought that I want to add to it that I didn't think about. We as a group do have a concern. We run these trucks a long time. I mean, you know that. With the pumper tankers, we're in here trying to get them refurbished, and they're 20, 21-year-old trucks. I can tell you the average age of the fleet in Crescent, average, is 15 years right now. And I think if you go around to all of us, you'll hear similar deals. You know, we don't put a lot of miles on the trucks, but I'll guarantee you the last used truck you want to buy is a used Crescent brush truck, because it's been mistreated. But one of the things that concerns some of us and some departments a little more than others is, of course, one thing that's not being addressed with what we lay out here is, what about all this other apparatus as time goes on? And that is not just for you guys unique to a fire department. You know, you have sheriff's vehicles turning over. When Roger comes in here, or the sheriff comes in and says, man, I just blew the engine on this patrol vehicle, you know, you go to your Fund 55 and see, well, have we stashed enough away to help it out, and kind of do that. And I think kind of where we sort of came down last night talking as a group, but it's not a real feel-good thing, is that you know, whether it's road dump trucks, whether it's fire trucks, y'all have that thing across the board as to how do you know that you're set up when this equipment wears out and your Fund 55 is not a great big line relative to what our stuff costs and what y'all's stuff costs too. And, I guess it would be fair to say that if you do have an ESD funding mechanism, you've got more money coming in that can kind of try to plan for, the retirement and the replacement for vehicles. But whether you talk fire trucks or not, that's a problem you guys have irregardless. It's just that if you start to talk about our stuff too, we just doubled your problem, I can tell you, is what we did, because it seems like our toys aren't the cheapest toys to have to play. Yes, sir, Jack?
Just sitting here, one other thing, if I take your average on the first page, the total budget, the average, that averages per population $203.78 per citizen in that population number, that 26, you said the average number is 26.5.
Yes, sir. That's just the average of that.
I understand, and I understand what that is. And where I'm getting at is Hood County's 6160 with the total budget of $1,132,000, that's 1838. That's a big, I'm just sitting here looking at it, from a number standpoint, that's a big disparity. Big.
Yes, sir.
And so, I understand, the needs, are there. How do we get there? That's something we're gonna have to work on.
Yes, sir.
But, that puts it in perspective, because I'm gonna do more, slicing and dicing of all these numbers. But, that puts it, that's the bottom line, when you've got a 203 average versus an $18 average per populace.
I would probably say, if you're trying to look at numbers to try to say, how much do you need a fire department? You're looking at two things, your property values, because part of our job is to protect property, and that's part of the reason why I did this on a property tax evaluation basis. And the second one is the number of people that we're charged with trying to take care of. And you hit it right on the head. I think this front page should suggest to you, like you just said, Jack, that what we've been doing so far has been delivering a lot for a little for these taxpayers out here. And we don't want it, we're not trying to quit doing that, but we do have things that we laid out. And yes, sir, your math, I can't argue with it. It's absolutely correct.
All that, have you got all that in Excel? Or how did you,
No,
those numbers?
No, but this is on a handwritten piece of paper
Okay.
where I went to each
So I'm
website.
gonna go
and just
handwrite,
came
I'm gonna
over
go
and-
handwork,
and-
what I wanna go work.
Yes, sir.
For each one of those, cities.
And you can go look at them, and I will promise you, you will look at one city's budget and say, well, now, wait a minute, this one includes this, and this
Right.
other one
Yeah,
doesn't. These are not to the penny, apples to apples, there's no way.
But what I'm saying is, if I start slicing and dicing, the population to the numbers, to the operating budget, et cetera, versus what you've got for what Hood County's doing, I can already see there's a significant per population,
Yes,
difference.
yes.
Good work. It's got some good information for us. It's really got good information. Anybody have anything else?
Do y'all got anything you need to add to me rambling
This
here?
is, I know one thing, y'all have been doing a lot with the little for a long time. That really is, and y'all really performed well. I've seen it firsthand at our ranch 10, 15 years ago. I know that. Everybody was out there, and I'm like Mr. Wilson here. We sure getting a good bargain, and we got to keep y'all in good equipment and the the water, it's like you said, you can't fight a fire without water, can you? So, let's
I know.
put our,
I know Jack will wince when I tell him, we put almost 30,000 gallons down there on the gun range that
Yeah.
And you can see when we're talking, you know, up on the highway, how we had one of our tankers set on the
Yeah,
highway
we
and
did.
all the shuttle coming through. He's seen it firsthand, what we're talking about, and, you know, when you start saying 30,000 gallons, and then your trucks are carrying 1,000 to 2,000 gallons, and these trucks were going back to Ben Brooks hydrants and all, that's where you've seen firsthand what a tanker has to do.
And, you know, so that part of it, because that particular fire, based on the information, somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 degrees, especially in one area. And, you know, they were bringing in tankers, the propane tank that they were worried about as
Yeah.
much as the ammo had just been filled,
Yes, sir.
and it did not pop.
We kept water on top of that for a
Yes, sir.
while back over there to do that. Obviously, that fire's in Crescent's response area also, the Tarrant County part of it, and, unfortunately, we weren't able to we kept some of Jack's property okay, but not as much as I wish we could have, but it kinda got ahead of us pretty quick.
And the other thing is, I've got a cousin that's in the Panhandle, he's been in the fire department for his whole career also. And when we talked about the meandering, you know, when you were doing the daisy link on the tankers,
Yes, sir.
a lot of people don't understand how big of a deal that is. I understand that, but when, you know, Paul and I were talking about it, he's going, they did what? And, you know, he started looking into how they could do that up there. And so, you know, that was, you know, a major, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that was a major big deal to be able to daisy link, you know, tankers to get water to that fire
Well, that
over the distance.
like we said, we had a 4-mile shuttle, 8-mile round trip, and, it got close, but we pretty well kept up. He was the man down there at the engine, and there were a couple of times I called him and says, I'm about out up here, but
Right.
we never got all the way out. We kept it going.
I think we were flowing roughly 1,100 gallons in a minute, and
Wow.
we're like 25 minutes between the lines off my engine and the ladder truck.
You know, the statistics and the studies and all, these fires that we go to, they burn faster and hotter than 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, we can get by taking our time to get the water to them and stuff like that. But just the type of materials that's in furniture and everything, there's a lot of studies that show us how much it's important for us to get these resources there as soon as we can. We're pieced together like Meander kind of showed to, you hit us in the right place at the right time, we're in pretty good, we can pull it off. But you go up to the other side of his area rather than Meander, and you get the same thing going, and that's where people's building these big houses. We're way behind, and he doesn't have the tools to do that.
That's what got a lot of us scared right now, the rapid growth, population growth we have. Our call volume 5 years ago to today has probably doubled, almost tripled, and all it's gonna do is get worse. So the trucks that we were keeping 20, 25, 30 years, with the run volumes we're getting now, you know, those old trucks aren't gonna last. I mean, like I told y'all earlier, when we took off for the Meander fire, my tanker driver, of course, it was a hard truck to drive anyway, being a manual. When he let the clutch out, went to make the first turn, pushed the clutch back in, it never disengaged. So actually, he just reached over and turned the key off and let it go in the bar ditch and said, tow it home. So, you know, we lost the transmission on it on that night. As for repairing it, you know, it's, what comes first, repairing that tanker or spending $18,000 on 8 sets of bunker gear that just expired in its working life? Well, I'm gonna buy the bunker gear, which I just did. So, when I get reimbursed from the forestry service for that $18,000, probably about 2 weeks, I'll probably get about 15,000 back out of it. That's how, if you look at my numbers, you know, versus subsidy and donation, I rely on the forestry grant, stuff like that, but I have to keep that money to juggle around. Yeah, 8 cents of bunker gear, $18,000. I write the check, I get 15,000 back, I gotta wait for it. Well, I got another 8 sets of gear that expire at the end of this year. It takes about 6 to 8 months after you order the gear to get it. So I gotta start ordering gear now, so, you know, it's,
And we didn't give you a line for ordering this gear because we're doing it out of that subsidy line. That's part of what you're kind of seeing there on that jump up. And to the question of the trucks, yeah, they're older. I mean, I hate to sound like we're running B-52s, but I got a lot of guys that's driving trucks that are older than they are.
Yeah. And see, one thing about the boats, and you know, the lake is 39 nautical miles from Tin Top Bridge to the dam. You know, when I was on the sheriff's department in the 80s, there was roughly 230 some odd miles of shoreline. Well, with all the developments and all the canals and everything, I don't know what that number is now. And you've got so many homes being built right on the water, you know, and you, like you said earlier, you can't get, you know, the trucks down in there, you know, to do that. And, you know, having, you know, one on each top, you know, each half of the lake, probably not a bad idea. But, you know, when you've got that much nautical, you know, miles and whatever the number is now on shoreline, because I know it's more than 230 now, because of all of the other new developments. It's got the, you know, canals and, you know, coves and everything. So that's something that, you know, to look at also. The tankers, I think, probably are the number one, and, you know, just, you know, from what I've heard so far today, that's the number one issue.
The subsidy deal is really important to us too, but, our trouble is it's so interlocked. Like we said, you sure don't want to send Crescent a tanker and drive up there and see that thing sitting outside in the hailstorm. I'm not gonna let that happen. But, if this stuff does interlock, so.
Well, and I'd like to say, I hadn't said a whole lot. I'm pretty, everybody knows that I'm on this side of the desk now, mainly because I used to be on the other side of the desk. And one of the things, I know these are some huge numbers we're talking about here, but this is a whole lot of catch-up. This is a long, a pretty long time of things that, you know, just like Mike says, it's you're out there with baling wire putting stuff back together to, you know, make the next run, deciding, are you buying bunker gear, or are you fixing this problem over here? And it's been that way for, you know, a lot of years, and this is a lot of stuff to catch up. I know this is a huge number looking at it right now, but, you know, sitting in on some of these meetings, I see how this brings us a whole lot more current. And on the back side of this, the maintenance, once you get it right, is less. So I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't wanna say a whole lot, I'm sitting here trying to figure out exactly which hat my heart's wearing right at this minute, and, you know,
Well, and Judge and Commissioners, I have to take partial responsibility because every time I hear somebody say the county can't or the county won't, I've always asked, well, what have you asked for that you haven't gotten? You know, the only guaranteed no that we're gonna get is the question we never ask. So this is kind of the byproduct of me telling them, you know, if there's something you need to come forward and ask for it, because without asking, you're never gonna get an answer. So, you know, all these guys have worked hard for the last month and a half trying to get all this stuff put together and come to a decisive conclusion amongst all of them together, what they really identify their needs to be, and this is kind of the byproduct of that.
I think you did a good job of explaining it.
Y'all all did a good job.
Yep.
There's no question in my mind that the need is there. I mean, really, it's there, so. I'm looking at Becky Kidd back there looking
yeah.
at me.
Do we need to go pick her up off
Yeah.
the floor?
Yes, yes. Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, no,
See, it's like she's Superman burning a hole in me. Could you mind looking at conscious of
Yeah.
Jack Wilson here?
well, she's,
Pistol in the car, so you're all right.
But we do. Thank y'all very much, and this is good information for us. It's so many things that fit together too. I mean, you can't recruit anybody if you got beat up old equipment. And if you don't have any air packs, you're gonna ask somebody to go out there and join you. I mean, hey, you gotta be as safe as you can. Y'all doing a favor. And all volunteers, I mean, y'all do as good a job volunteers as a lot of people do with fully paid personnel. And when you put the paid personnel cost into this, it kind of really sees where I think there's some movement here that needs to be making. This kid, sharpen your pencil. Okay? She's shaking yes. So if anybody doesn't have anything else, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank y'all all very much for coming.